Hey, TCT Network. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about coaching, particularly foundational coaching. And this will be a basic training video to help you understand some of the changes that have come to our foundational coaching track uh, within the network. And we have a manual that has been put together. And so I'm going to walk you through that manual a bit, go over some basics um, that we should be looking to do in foundational coaching this year, and hopefully answer any questions that you may have after you read the manual. Obviously, this video will not be exhaustive. We will have a follow-up call about 3 to 6 months into your coaching this year, just to see if you have any questions, any feedback that you want to give, or brainstorming together on how we can be better coaches. Okay. So first thing that we want to remember is we have 3 types of coaching now that we're offering within the network. Okay. And that is foundational coaching. Foundational coaching is for kind of new people into the network who are still learning our values and learning what it means to be a Christian hedonistic church planting network. And so we have certain particular coaches who we think embody those values well, who guard those, that have that DNA, and they'll help with the foundational coaching. We also have strategic coaching, is for a bit more advanced, maybe people who are further into the church planting process, the church revitalization process, wherever they are. They may want something more strategic, like something on small groups or preaching, or things like that. And so that's what those groups are for. And then we have coaching consultants. We have people that are willing to come and visit a church to offer them some on-site coaching as well. Okay, so that's the 3 types of coaching that we now offer within the network. So this video is primarily aimed at foundational coaching. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to go through 6 main things that we need to familiarize ourselves with foundational coaching. The first thing that we want to do in foundational coaching, and the network will help do this, is establish a lead within the foundational coaching group. And so, the network is going to release names. So if you're watching this video, you're probably one of those people that we recognize as a lead, as someone who embodies the DNA of the network and can maintain those values in your foundational coaching group. Establishing that lead is a recognition that this person is going to help steward and guide us in the right direction here within the group. So there's a sense where within a coaching group, everybody is a lead, right? Most of these people are lead pastors, or lead ministry leaders, pastors' wives. They usually quickly become leads as well, among women and things like that. So what we want to say is, okay, we're gonna recognize that there is someone that we're gonna kind of establish as a lead that's going to make sure that the group stays on task, that is going to make sure that we're watching our time, that if any information needs to get sent out to the rest of the group, they're going to be the one who takes the initiative in those things. So this is primarily what the lead does. They are a steward or a servant. And they want to just make sure that the group stewards their time well. That's the purpose of establishing a lead within the group. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to familiarize ourselves with the coaching manual. Okay. So this is where I'm going to start doing a little bit of screen sharing here. And I'm going to open up the coaching manual for you. Okay. So let me share my screen. And what we see here, hopefully, just a second, is that you see the coaching manual here. Okay, so there's your cover page, and then you're going to get into an overview of how to use this guide, how to use the manual here. And you have a summary, And you have a brief description there of what foundational coaching is, right? And we've already kind of established that. So I'm sure all of you can read that and it'll further explain some things to you. Okay. Now, what's an important part here that we're going to go over in this training video is there's a certain method or rhythm to our coaching, foundational coaching groups now. Okay. And this rhythm we call, for the men, we call it a man message mission rhythm. Or for our women, we call it a woman word witness rhythm. Okay. So let's break those parts down. Okay. So with foundational coaching, what we're trying to do here is we want to provide holistic care for everybody in our group. So what this method is going to do is it's going to allow people to pick what type of coaching they would like in their session. So before the session starts, you'll have your jot form that our great assistant, behind the scenes guy, Craig Priestley, makes sure that we all get. And in your jot form, you're going to indicate what type of method, what type of rhythm you want to focus on in that session. Okay. So if you pick man or woman, that means that there's some soul care. There's some things with you personally that are going on that you would like to talk about with the group. Now, this could be just things that are heavy on your soul, just anxieties, depression, all sorts of just personal things in your life that you want to just talk to somebody about. And as much as we love our elders and we love, people in our church and we want to lean on them, sometimes it can just be helpful to bounce some ideas off some other people that are not in our context so that we can go back into our context with some different eyeballs on it. And so that's what the man or the woman part is really focused on, is something that's going on with you personally. And it doesn't even have to be that deep. It could just be as simple as, you know what, I want to eat better, or I want to work out more. And that would be a man or a woman issue, right? That's something personal that's going on with you. So that's that. Then as you move down here, you have the message or word. Now, these are sometimes issues that come up in pastoral ministry or just, general ministry, is that there will be certain issues that will arise biblically, things that we're wrestling through to say, okay, I took seminary courses, or, I've taken this class online, I've taken, I've read this book, but I'm still just wanting to kind of hear some other people talk about this doctrine or this theology or this issue in the Bible. And so this is where someone's going to say, hey, there's something that I'm working through in my preaching. There's something I'm working through with our elder board. What women's roles are, within the life of the church, stuff like that. And so if you want to flesh that out with some other people, with some other pastors across the network, other wives, across the network, then that's what you'd be focusing on here, is that these are certain kind of issues that you're working through the scriptures, and you want to bounce some ideas off some other people and hear what they have to say as well. Finally, mission or witness. This is the portion of coaching that might fall in line with more just traditional coaching, right? Is where you've got a ministry strategy that you're trying to develop. And the ministry strategy that you're trying to develop here, will, affects how you're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus in your community. Okay. So you might be coming up with like a block party strategy, or something, the way that you want to guide your people to be more missional, evangelistic methods, or whatever it is, however it is you're carrying out God's mission, how you're being witnesses, that both will happen internally within the church. So this could be also, hey, I want to develop a better small group ministry that your small group ministry may be more of an internal ministry, um, or it can be an external ministry. So we want to be faithful witnesses both inside the church and outside the church. We want to carry out God's mission inside the church and outside the church. Uh, so, uh, so we don't want to limit the scope of just going when we're thinking about mission or witness rhythm. This is really about developing ministry strategies, both internally and externally. So this is where you come with any kind of strategy that you're wrestling through, both inside your church and outside your church. Okay. So now that's the method. That's the rhythm of the coaching, foundational coaching. So then you have in section 3 here, an introduction to foundational coaching. There will be a time when we're going to evaluate how the coaching group is going. So you want to familiarize yourself and know what that means. There will be a time for growth, multiplication, transition, those kinds of things. And I'm gonna circle back to these things a little bit later. Right now, I'm just trying to get us through the coaching manual real quick, so you can just see what it generally looks like. So you have how the group's going to form here. You have story forming and different things like that. And that's got appendices in the back for you. And appendix 1 is going to tell you a little bit more about that. You want to cultivate an identity, within the life of the group. Read what all that means, growth rhythms, then spreading a passion. And that's all how the group's going to form into some healthy maturity. Then you have some coaching method stuff here about asking good questions. We've got 34 X-ray questions by David Powlison that you can ask that come to Soul Care. We have 46 coaching questions that are taken from Scott Thomas and Tom Wood in their book, Gospel Coaching. And so both of these are good resources that are in appendices for you that you can check out and familiarize yourself with. Want to make sure that we're speaking the truth in love as we're talking to people. We don't want to just be kind of heavy-handed here, but we want to speak with love as the primary motivation for what we're doing. And then we have some frequently asked questions for coaching groups, and we have a couple questions there that you can skim through and look at the answers to those. And then the final conclusion in the coaching manual that just kind of wrap things up, tie a bow on it, and hopefully that will be a resource that can help you as we continue our coaching season and methods to spread passion for God's glory and through our church planting efforts. Okay? And then you see the section there for the appendices, and appendix 1, appendix 2, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So that's the coaching manual. Just briefly to take you through that. So now the next thing on my list of things to talk to you about here is, so we've talked about establishing a lead. We've talked about the coaching manual, and there'll be a one-page summary and all this stuff for you later. Next is the training video. That's this. And so if you've got the established lead, familiar yourselves with the coaching manual, which you've just taken a look at, now you want to make sure that you watch the entirety of the training video. And so when you go through the entire training video, you should have a pretty good idea of what we're trying to accomplish in our foundational coaching. Next on that list, already done this, is the coaching method. That is the man, message, mission method, or woman, word, witness method. So when we talk about the coaching method, that's what we're talking about. We truly believe that method will provide holistic care for everybody in our coaching groups. So it allows the person to come in and say, we're going to focus and narrow in on this particular issue, whether it's something personal or something, a biblical issue that we're trying to wrestle, or it's a ministry strategy that we're trying to work on with our coaching group. Okay, so that's the method. Now, you saw hopefully in your coaching manual that there are some what I like to call transitional periods within the coaching rhythm. Um, so when you first get into a group, depending on whether or not the group's been together before, or if they're a new group, okay, that's where it's going to be a little bit of a difference. So you want to think of these more as principles and not, strict laws. Okay, so when we talk about these transitional periods, that's the section in the manual where it's talking about the group forming. Okay, so there's just these parts of forming, gospel formation, um, that we just need to recognize and say, hey, like this is a real part of coming together. So there's going to be this get to know each other period, and so it's going to be the coach's responsibility to help cultivate that, right? So in the coaching manual, coaching guide, whatever you want to call it, that's what we call the story forming. This is where we should get to know each other a bit, learn each other's stories. Okay. And this is a vital part of coaching, um, because we cannot look at people in a vacuum. That there are parts of their story that have helped shape them into who they are today. And so we want to learn that. If we're gonna get to know each other, we want to know, hey, what's your family background? What are some of the identity forming things that have happened to you in your lifetime? Where have you had some major letdowns and hurts and wounds? And where have you just seen the gospel just reshape who you are and to transform you into a new person? And then what are the things that you're passionate about now? What are the things that you're really doing to advance the gospel in your life and the lives of people around you? And so that's what we call story forming. Now, if you know what I was doing there, that was essentially just kind of fleshing out the theology of creation, fall, redemption, restoration, right? That we believe that everybody, that's their general story, that they have some identity forming things in creation. They have some letdowns, some places where they had maybe some misplaced identity or some things that deep wounds and brokenness in this world. And then they have some places where the gospel kind of stepped in and helped heal some of those wounds, and now they've got some things that they're feeling that they're carrying out God's mission to bring restoration into the world. And so as we're listening to people, I think it's wise to kind of listen to them in that framework, um, and that kind of gives us a general idea of where is their story and God's story kind of intersecting, and then the places maybe where it's not. And so that's a transitional period. That's one transitional period. Is that story forming period. And then that next period is going to be what we call cultivating identity, right? So that's where we kind of moved out of the get to know you phase and now saying, okay, now we want to make sure that the TCT DNA is being established, is being cultivated in each other. And so that's an important part of the TCT foundational coaching time. Okay, so we want to make sure that is a part of the that we recognize this is a part of the group being established. Okay, all right. So sorry, I'm just trying to look at my notes and do this video at the same time, which probably should have kept some of my notes up. All right. So cultivating identity is about us maintaining those DNA values, right? Now, as we cultivate those identities on the TCT DNA, the next thing that we're going to start doing is we're going to start moving toward growth. So this is where we're going to start pushing each other. So once we've gotten to know each other, once we've kind of established our DNA and our values, now we start moving into this phase of, okay, I'm going to push a little bit toward growth. I'm going to maybe offer a bit more feedback and start saying, hey, I've heard this in your story. I've heard this regularly from you. And here's maybe a little bit of feedback that I now want to offer, some helps and things like that. So this is where you're really starting to kind of get into the coaching. This is where it really starts flourishing. Things are starting to take off, and you're really starting to like, man, this is such a good time now, where I'm really enjoying this time because now I'm getting some momentum, right? That we've established. We've got to know each other a bit. We've got to cultivate some identities and some camaraderie and community, and now we're starting to push one another toward growth. Okay, and then finally, in this formation, in these transitional periods, there will be a spreading of passion period. Okay, um, so this means a couple of different things. Okay, um, some of what that means is that um, the lead will start to kind of become less of a lead. That other people will start, hopefully, taking ownership and leadership in the life of the group as well. And so this is where different gifts that people within the group have start to really manifest and flourish. And, so this guy over here is really good at soul care, and this guy's good at strategic focus, and this guy's solid on doctrine, and, whatever. This is where the various gifts start to really work themselves out. And people recognize that even. They say, well, this is a kind of a doctrinal issue. And I don't know that person over there really knows their doctrine. So I'm going to kind of defer to them and then just offer a little bit, maybe myself at the tail end or something like that. So that's one way that we're talking about when spreading a passion. Okay, so now the kind of everybody's kind of coming up to the same level. Another transitional period when it comes to spreading a passion is your group might hit kind of a dead spot. Where, you feel like you're maybe not just getting as much out of it anymore. And that could be a sign either of you're worn out, and maybe it's time to move on to strategic coaching, or it could also be maybe it's time for me to be a lead. And so it's time to break up the band, and to spread a passion by going in now and serving other people who are coming into the network, other new pastors, other new church planters, other new wives into the network, and invest in them and say, okay, now it's time for me to go give away for a bit that I've had a good season of pouring into. Now it's maybe time for me to go and give away for a season. And so that's what we mean pretty much by spreading a passion. It's kind of first that idea of all the cream is rising to the top. And then also it might be a time to transition the group out of that rhythm of whatever is going on into maybe it's time to give away now, my coaching to someone else. Or it could be that I need to move into some more strategic coaching, right? So no matter what, there's a type of transitional period there where it's like, okay, I'm looking for something a bit more. That could be, it means I need to give away, or it could mean I just need something more strategic in the things that I'm doing. Okay. Next on my list of things to review is the appendices. Okay. Now the appendices were given to you to help with certain aspects, particular aspects of coaching. So you don't have to read them. I highly, highly recommend that you read them, at least to just familiarize yourself with them. Once again, they're only about 8 to 10 pages max. So it's not a lot of reading, but it's important to just know some of those methods in the back of story forming. You saw me using that with the creation, fall, redemption, restoration, narrative there. And that helps for me to get to know somebody and to some data for me to keep track of as I'm trying to get to know people in my group. And then also you're going to have some fruit to root application, which is taken from Paul David Tripp and Timothy Lane's book, How People Change, where he's got the 3 trees method in there where you can, that will really help with soul care and learning kind of heat, pressure on a situation and kind of what that reveals, either good fruit or bad fruit, and then get in underneath those roots that are kind of bringing out that fruit out and trying to see where the cross can help, um, you know, uh, the person move toward good fruit, um, in their gospel ministry. We also have sections on asking good questions, and that's where we have the X-ray questions and the coaching questions. Once again, um, you know, um, we also have some identities that I think are some basic identities to the Christian life. Um, and so you have a worshiper identity, a family identity, a missionary identity, a servant identity, a disciple identity. And so these are taken from Steve Childers, who was someone who helped set up our network, and taken from his coaching manual, where he talks about in the book of Acts that these are the five basic identities of the early church in Acts 2. That they were worshipers, they were disciples or learners, they were missionaries or evangelists, they were a community or family, or servants and people of mercy. So those are, I think, good 5 key identities to make sure that we're keeping in mind as we listen to people. So we want to, as we're cultivating identity, remember that's a part of um, the formation of the group, of us coming together. Those are 5 identities that you can really lean on in cultivating identity, right? Making sure that they are embracing or holding tightly onto um, their identity as a worshiper, their identity as a missionary, their identity as a servant, their identity as a disciple of Christ, their identity as someone who's a part of the family of God, the community of faith. So these are identities that you can lean on to help in your coaching. And then finally, there's a method that also helps with listening to people. I really love the Saint Sinner Sufferer method, taken from Mike Hemlick's book Crosstalk, where he talks about when I'm listening to someone. So as this person in my coaching group is sharing, listening for what type of struggle is it that they're sharing. A saint issue would be someone who is struggling with holiness, with wanting to be more conformed into the image of Christ. So they're saying, I'm having trouble getting something out of my time in the Word. So what we want to notice there is that they're in the Word. Or they may even say, I just want to be in the Word. I'm not even in it. So there's a desire to be in the Word more. So that's someone, I would say that's a sainthood issue, right? Like that's a holiness issue. That's a conformed into the image of Christ issue. And say, okay, so I'm not going to go after this person like they're a sinner, but this is someone who's desiring holiness. This is someone who's desiring to grow in the means of grace, the habits of grace. And so we're going to coach them through that. We're going to care for them through that kind of idea. Sinner is someone who's struggling with the opposite of that, right? They're not moving toward a saint identity, but they're moving away from that. And so this is where someone has to be called to repentance and say, okay, this is you moving away from your gospel identity. And we want to help move you back toward a realignment here, where you're drifting, and we want to bring you back toward an alignment with the gospel, that your life aligns with the gospel. Okay, and that could happen within a coaching group. And so we want to be aware that we could be listening to someone who's confessing sin and needs help. And obviously we're going to steer them toward their local elders, the people in their church, and things like that. There's only so much we can do in a coaching group, right? But we want to listen to it with that lens. Okay, wait a minute, this is not a saint issue, this is a sinner issue. All right. And then last is a sufferer. Okay, this is more when someone is not partaking in sin, but they're being sinned against. Okay, And so there's two ways. I always talk about this with my people at my church. Is there's two ways to suffer. You can suffer like a sinner, or you can suffer like a saint. And so what we want to do is we want to help that person suffer like a saint and not like a sinner, right? And so that's, but we're listening particularly for, okay, it's not a saint issue, it's not a sin issue, this is a suffering issue, this is someone being sinned against. And as pastors and wives of pastors, we will be sinned against. There will be people who will have gossip and slander about us, and they'll attack your husband, or they'll attack your wife, they'll attack your ministry, your church. Oh, you guys are unloving people, and all. I mean, anybody who's done this for any season of time is going to know that's a part of it. And so we have to minister to people, saying, okay, they're suffering right now, and how can we minister to them in the midst of that suffering? Right. So these are three helpful ways, I think, really to listen well to people. It's a saint, sinner, sufferer paradigm. And so that's why that one is in there for you. Okay. All right. So that's the appendices. Yeah. Next thing we want to do here, a final thing, is we want to establish your coaching style. Okay. What I mean by that, okay, is we have a particular method that we're encouraging you to use, which is the man message mission method for men and the woman word witness for women. All right. We've also tossed in some suggestions of things that you can use in the appendices to help be a good TCT foundational coach. Those are just suggestions. You don't have to use them. So this is where, when it comes to developing your style, where you get to do now a lot of freedom in that. Okay. This is the part I enjoy as someone who comes from a family of creatives, artists, and things like that. This is where I really start to have fun with ministry a bit. Now, I know some of the ways that maybe I have fun here may not sound fun to you, but that's fine. That's the beauty of the kingdom. And so I've got my ways that I'm going to develop my coaching style, and I just want to encourage you to develop your ways. So I'm going to share with you a couple of things that I do with my foundational coaching group, or things that I did this past year, really, that helped, I think, establish a good culture within our group. And so a couple of things that you want to do, and some of these things, you're naturally already going to do them. I'm just going to tell you, hey, make sure you're doing them, okay? Have some form of regular communication with each other. So this is where you want to maybe develop a text chain, right? So you're going to have a text that is ongoing between you and the other two or other three people in your coaching group, okay? So that you have a way to instantaneously communicate with one another, updates, things that are going on with each other, because you don't want to think of your coaching as a once a month thing. That's not gonna, it's gonna seem distant, unhelpful, but these people need to actually be your friends. And I don't know about you, but I text my friends. And so if there's something going on with me, or if there's something I want prayer about, I want to let my friends know. And so starting a text chain is a way to have ongoing communication with your group. Now, if you're feeling a bit adventurous, you can also do that over Slack. So I'm going to show you here on Slack. I'm going to do another screen share of how I did that, or how I attempted to do that. Two guys in my coaching group used it and two guys didn't, so that's fine. So Slack can be very helpful to not get so many emails and so many text messages. I get a lot of email, a lot of text messages. And so it's nice to kind of streamline some of my communication. So that's what Slack does for me. And so I'm going to share with you how I do that on Slack. Okay. So I'm pulling up Slack here, and I have you take a look at it here. All right. So, so you can see here on February 8th of 2018, so it's almost a year ago, that I started a group. So you see channels here. I'm highlighting my cursor on channels. I go over here and I hit this little add button. to create a channel. All right. And in there, I put my channel with my guys, which was the Coaching Midwest group. Okay. So this was a group of all Midwest guys that were in a coaching group together. And so I started a Coaching Midwest group where we could have open, regular communication that we could go back and look at if we needed to in here. And what's great about this resource, because you can't always do this over text messages, is that we could share pictures, we could share PDFs. I put Craig here one time shared some resources from Blueprint Church over a conversation that we were having about, I think it was female deacons and things like that, and women in ministry. And then we also had a Google Doc here from Midwest Coaching, which is another thing. I'm going to show you a method that I use to help with coaching as well. So we want to have forms of communication. Okay, is the main point here. We have maybe a text message stream with each other, a Slack channel possibly where we can exchange resources, conversation, this ongoing idea. Okay, so that's a possibility. Is a Slack channel, and you can use that. You can actually make that channel private if you'd like as well. I don't think I did that on ours, but you can. You can make it a private thing, so it's a secured communication channel. You don't have to worry about other people seeing stuff in there. So that's a great idea there. Now, another thing that I did is, I don't know if you guys have run into this in your coaching, that because a lot of our coaching is only once a month, I forget a lot of times what took place in the last coaching session. So what was helpful for me, and I think for our guys, is I started a Google Doc for our coaching group as well. And so I'm going to do another screen share here of how I kind of did that. All right. So just to walk you through, if in case you want to try this, you can. Don't have to. This is where, once again, you got to develop your coaching style. All right. So I'm just trying to give you principles here. Regular communication with each other, ways that you can communicate, exchange ideas, methods, and different things like that with each other. That was the first part. Next one is tracking data, right? So this is how we're going to track what's going on with each other, that we need to have a place where we can kind of track some of the data so that we can familiar ourselves, remember what's going on with each other. All right. So that was the reason why I came up with the Google Doc idea. All right. So I'm going to screen share here again. And I'm going to show you how I set up a Google Doc to do that. All right. So you see here, I'm in my Google Drive. All right. So if you go into your Gmail, you'll have, a little bar icon here of things up here that says Gmail, Drive, Calendar, all these kind of things. And so you hit Drive, and it takes you to your Google Drive, right? And it has all these folders and things that'll come up there in your Google Drive, okay? But what I'm in is I'm in what's called a TCT Coaching Drive folder, all right? And I've got a folder for 2018. So I go into 2018, and I made a Google Doc. So you can make a new, so you have a new button over there on the left side of your screen, and you click new, and you can make a Google Doc there. All right, and you just click on Google Doc, and it'll open up a new Google Doc, which just looks like a Word file, right? If you're familiar with Microsoft Word. All right, so I'm going to open up this TCT Coaching 2018 Coaching one and show you a few things that I did here. All right, so what you see here at the top are dates for every single one of our coaching groups for the year. All right. So we met on the third Wednesday of every month. And so I just went in here and I put down dates for the third Wednesday of every month. Okay. And made this doc. Now, what's great about this Google Doc is when you click on here, there is a little quick link that I created to go immediately to one of these dates. So if I'm looking for a conversation, looking back on a conversation, maybe some resources are in there, things I want to remember on May 3rd or May 23rd, I click on the May 23rd date, I click the quick link, and it takes me down to all this stuff that we talked about on May 23rd. And you can see in there, there's links from a Gospel Coalition article to train and mobilize women in the church. So you can see that's a conversation we were having about women in the church in our coaching group. And so that's how that works. Now, how did I make those quick links? That's what you do. So I'll go back all the way up to the top here. So you see on February, you kind of click on this, and then you'll have this little button over here, add comment. All right. And wait a minute, no, that's not right. So you'll highlight this thing, and then you do a right bar click on it and link. Okay, you see that? You can make a link to it, and then you can write what text you want on it and then make the link. Okay. So you can see right there, I've got the link that I've made, and then you press apply and you've made a link to that. Okay. So it's not that hard to figure out. Yeah, so yeah, you just do that, and that's so it creates quick links that I can go back and look at those resources. And my guys in my group have access to this document, so we all have access to it. So everybody can go and look at this at any time they want. And so it's not just a resource that's helpful for me, but it's helpful for everybody in the group. Okay. And then as the lead, what I made sure that I did was I'm the one who primarily took notes during the meeting. Okay. So if there's things that the guys are talking about with each other, I'm writing that stuff down, muting my button. And so you can see all these notes that I took. I put down specific maybe action items that came out of that time together that we were supposed to work on. And so our guys can go back and they can look at, okay, what was I supposed to work on from my coaching group this past month? And so they have action items and things like that, just advice and things, data that we took down, just what's going on with each other and different things like that. Okay. So that's how you do that. Okay. And like I said, that's a way to track data of what's going on with each other, action items, things that are coming out of that coaching time together. All right. Now, that's what I do. That's not what you have to do. I do think it's important to track data. So however you want to do that, do it. If you want to do it on a Slack channel, you could do it there. If you want to do it on some other method, I don't know. I'm just sharing with you the things that have been helpful for me. And I think for the guys in our group, this is a way for me to say to the guys in my group, I care about you. I care about your needs. I care about what's going on with you. And so as establishing the lead is by tracking data of what's going on with them, this is a way for me to communicate care, that you're really important to me. And I'm going to track this so that I can familiarize myself with what's going on with you. I can go back and review my notes. So if a time comes up, where, okay, what happened last time with, Craig? Well, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna look at my data and say, okay, now I have follow-up questions. You say, hey, Craig, we talked about this last time. Like, what's going on with that, right? Where we can follow up with each other. Now, some of you may have great memories and you can store all that up here. I'm not like that. I gotta kind of put it down on paper, to make sure that I've got some resources I can go back to and look at. Okay, so that's a way that I try to help track data. So we have communication channels, right? So ways we're going to regularly communicate with each other, and then a way we're going to track data, right? The next is establishing a rhythm. Okay, you want to develop a rhythm of some kind. So we had four guys in our group, and what we did is we said, okay, we want to make sure that care that everybody gets a good amount of time in the group. So what we decided to do was a rhythm of two guys every session and not all four of us. Okay. And we would give 45 minutes to each guy. Now, if we had somebody that says, okay, I can only be there for the first hour, then we would just make sure that person goes first, right? It says, okay, well, you've got an appointment you got to get to, so let's let you go first. So then that way, they can get out. But we can make sure that we've had some good time with them. So if your group is averaging an hour and a half, which is what our group was doing, an hour and a half of coaching once a month, they would get 45 minutes each month to come talking about either man, message, mission, woman, word, witness, right? So they come in and say, okay, I'm going to focus on personal, focus on man part or woman part. And we're going to spend 45 minutes talking about that, right? And so just listening, it's good to kind of have a ratio in your head of probably about 30 minutes of data gathering and then maybe about 15 minutes of interaction. Now, the person may not be a big talker, and so you might just need to, toss out a lot of questions and let them answer. And maybe it's just 45 minutes of asking questions and listening for answers. So it depends on each person. So the guys in my group, at least 3 out of 4 of us were talkers. So that 30-minute marker was like my mental note to say, okay, I've got to start steering the conversation more towards some coaching now. Say, okay, we've done some data gathering, we've done some good listening. Now it's time to start offering some feedback. Okay, so that's what we did. So 45 minutes per person, and 2 people would go each month. And that was our rhythm. You don't have to use that same rhythm. So you've got to find out what works best for you and the people in your group. But my responsibility as the lead then was to, okay, guys, it's been 30 minutes. We got about 15 minutes left with Craig. So let's start offering some feedback now. Let's move into. So you see, I'm not necessarily telling everything that Craig needs to know. That's not what it means to be the lead. I'm just calling out the transition, right? I'm just saying, okay, now it's time to move into, okay, let's start talking. Let's have a dialogue now, right? We've listened. Now let's start offering some feedback. And so the lead helps keep things moving along. And so when the 45 minutes were up, I'd say, okay, hey guys, it's been about 45 minutes. We've spent 45 minutes on Craig. Now it's time to move to John or to Mike or Kenton, whoever. And so that was what I would do. Now, all of us in our group agreed that if there was something really pressing with this one person, we might give them more extended time. Now we'd make sure we check over with the other person. We don't want to cut into your time, but it seems like really weighty on this person. Can we spend some extra time, caring for this person? So I'm getting over a cold here, guys, so I might sneeze. So that was, so we want to be able to adjust our coaching methods and rhythms to whatever the needs of our group are, right? So we don't want to get caught up in kind of legalistic, rigid, if you're familiar with the Trellis and the Vine book, it's let the trellis grow and let the vine grow and move the trellis as needed, right? So we've got these structures that we have that we want to be able to adjust as the vine, kind of needs. So we want to hold our vine, our care, our organic care tightly, and then hold our trellises, our structure a little bit loose. Okay, so we've got to be willing to adjust there. All right. So for those of you who are freaking about all these new methods, that should encourage you that, hey, we're not trying to get away from the organic part of the ministry. We just want to establish a few basic boundaries that would say, okay, there's a lot of freedom in these boundaries. Okay. And so I'm just trying to give you some principles that I have found helpful. Okay. So we've got some form of ongoing communication, whether it's a text exchange, a Slack channel, emails, whatever. All right. Um, then we also have a way to track data, keeping track of what's going on with each other, which is a principle that I find really helpful. And I think the guys in my group found helpful. And then third, right, is we want to develop a rhythm within the life of the group that makes sure that everybody's getting a good amount of coaching each month, that everybody's kind of getting the equal share, right? And remember, I'm a part of that. And so as the lead, I had to make sure that there's space for these guys to coach me too. And so once again, you're seeing what the lead really means. I don't even know if lead the best term, but but that's essentially what we're talking about here. It's just someone who's organizing the group, kind of keeping things moving along there. All right. And so that's the three main principles that I have found really helpful into making sure that the coaching group is flourishing, right? Is some type of regular ongoing communication, right? To my friends, I want to let them know what's going on with me. Tracking data, way to communicate care, way to steward what's going on with each other so that we can review and reflect on what's going on with each other. And then establishing a good rhythm that makes sure that everybody's getting an equal share. And so I think that's really important, those kind of three methods. And so that's kind of my coaching style, right? Is those kind of three key components. But you've got to develop your coaching style. I've given you some ideas of things that I do that I hope might help with you. But you don't have to use the things that I'm doing. We want to make sure that you have the freedom and the liberty to do what you think is best for the needs of your group. So what we're recommending is the rhythm, right? Man, message, mission, woman, word, witness, rhythm. So that's the non-negotiable one, right? But the other ones, I'm telling you, these are things that we kind of hold loosely. And so we didn't put all these like in the coaching manual because everybody's going to have their different method, and that's okay. So that is pretty much it now for the foundational coaching training video. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to contact the network. If you want to reach out to me to ask more questions about some of the things that I talked about in the video, feel free to do that. Craig has my info. I think they're working on a directory actually as well. And so there's plenty of ways that you can get a hold of me or people within the network to make sure that you have a good understanding of what we're trying to do in our foundational coaching for 2019. As I mentioned, there will be a follow-up call that we will record via Zoom call about 3 to 6 months from now to just invite the leads to come in, ask questions, get feedback. And for me personally, as someone that's been trying to help build this aspect of our ministry, is I want to hear from all you guys and gals what is going on in your groups so that we can adjust our trellises as needed. If there are things that are feeling too rigid or that don't feel natural, we want to address those things. So we want to get feedback from what's going on with everybody in the network. Okay. Thankful for you all. I hope that this was helpful. I hope it'll be helpful in helping people and yourself treasure Jesus more than anything else in this world. We want to be good stewards of these people that God has placed in our path, to coach them well, to care for their souls, to build them up, to carry out God's mission of spreading the passion for His glory and our joy to the world. And so thank you so much for listening, and I hope this was helpful. Grace and peace.